into computer. It gives me time to think about what I want to do. It's a very tactile process, which I just love the feeling of a good pen on good paper. But really at any time, the writing journal can be started. Even if they've already started writing, it's really meant to be a tool, another, tool in the writer's toolkit to be able to have one central place to keep ideas. So I have had authors that record themselves on their phones. They'll keep voice memos. So if they're in their car or they're right after a meeting and they've had an idea for their book, they'll record a voice memo. That's certainly a form of a writing journal. And then later, when they do have those 15 minutes for that day that they're going to sit down and write, they can take those voice memos and transpose them in their ideas. I have other writers that just write in their journal for 15 minutes a day. I have other writers that, just jot down phrases or notes or essentially bullet points for each time they want to sit or think about something in their writing journal. It really is a very individualized process for each person. But I do think that it's a great idea to have that because we all know what happens. You're in the shower, you don't have anything to write with, and all of a sudden you have this great idea, or you're
right.
out, you have nothing to write with, or, and you're like, what's this idea? So that's really what it's meant to be. It's just kind of an idea warehouse for authors to, keep everything all together. It doesn't have to be organized in any form or fashion, but if you have a great line that you think of at 2:00 in the morning, you can reach for that writing journal and jot it down and then come back to it when you're actually ready to write.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've got to have a place to write things down. And luckily for me, my godmother, Gloria, who lives in Boston years and years ago, so it has probably be 30 years ago, sent me a writing tablet. And it was something that it came in some kind of fabric pocket thing where it would be between your mattresses. And then you'd have a journal there. And she taught me that, you'll wake up and you'll have this great idea and you need to jot it down before you forget it. But I do agree that some of my best ideas have come out of the shower. No question. Right. I don't know why that is. Right. I know it's a great think tank area. But, what you're talking about is really something we're super excited that you're bringing along to our team and to our clients. And we've never really handled it this way, handled or talked or labeled something as like a writing coach or an author coach. I love that that's the way you've been approaching our clients and approaching, coming on board with that. And I know that, that's what people are looking for. And like you said, I mean, I think you do give a little more credit to people to say they can write, because I've known a lot that really can't, and they shouldn't. They're not writers. That's not their background. So I've always thought, it's okay. It's not okay. I guess it's harder for you because you're the one that has to edit their non-writing skills, right? But for me, I'm like, it's all right if you can't write. That's what our job is. But talk about maybe share a story where, you really brought someone from one place to another that, involved that author coaching and mentoring and all the skills that you're talking about. Maybe kind of a fun story where you saw it come to fruition.
So I have so many of those. Right. And I love my authors. They're like family, but I'll give you two quick ones. One was one of my very first clients that I worked with at my last publishing company. And she came to me with 3 bullet points. She did not classify herself as a writer. She was a school principal. She had 3 bullet points. And over 3 months, we worked together. And within those 3 months, she had a 30,000 word book. And she was dedicated. She got up early in the morning at 4 a.m. to write before she started her day. She was determined to finish this. She had the drive. She had the passion. She had the desire. And we got it done. And that was like one of the most incredible things I had ever seen. Now, that's not necessarily a great barometer for everyone, because not everyone is going to turn something around that quickly. But I was just so impressed. I always give my author coaching clients homework assignments. And she fulfilled all of the homework assignments very, very quickly. And she set the pace. And so I was willing to go along right on that journey with her. And she published an absolutely beautiful book. Another one of my favorite clients, or stories to tell, I suppose, about one of my clients is I have done a lot of books for veterans. I've done books for Korean veterans, Vietnam, World War II, even an Iraqi freedom book not too long ago. And these are the gentlemen that often have a hard time really putting their emotions on the page. And I had one client in particular who had really blocked out everything that had happened to him during Vietnam and was just really not willing to address it for about 40 years. But one day his family kind of said, you really should talk about this. You really should write about it. And he ended up writing an entire book. He worked so hard too. But there were many conversations of him sitting across from me in my office, just breaking down in tears because he wasn't sure he could write this particular section. And ultimately we finished the entire book. It was hard for him. Traumatic events are not easy to relive, especially when you've been burying them for 40 years. Right. But ultimately he ended up getting back in touch with his former unit. And they now have barbecues. Well, prior to COVID, I knew that they were having barbecues, a couple times a year, if not getting together once a month. And he completely reached out and reconnected with every person that was still living in his unit, and really accepted that this is a stage of life that he had gone through. And this was a part of his identity. It wasn't what became his identity, and that's not what he wanted his identity to be. But, it was a part of him, and it was something that he had experienced. And I thought that was just such a beautiful thing to watch him go through. And then a couple of months after we ended up publishing the book, I saw it in my local library. And I just had this proud mama moment, of this, being able to help facilitate his writing journey and seeing him through that process. And unintentionally so, I think editors sometimes end up being like therapists. We listen. That's one of the biggest things that we do. I think a lot of people think that editing is just critiquing things and giving criticism, but really our job is to listen and listen objectively so that we can pull out these nuggets of truth and things that are really going to be impactful for readers in the long run.
It's interesting, definitely, that what you bring up a few things to unpack, but the latest one being the listening. One of the keys I've noticed that when I've observed other editors, when they're talking for almost the whole meeting, I know that that's not a good sign, right? Because of what you exactly said. It just, everyone approaches things differently. But one of the things that we've tried to stay away from in this company is this idea of ghostwriting. Even for, I'd say easily for the first 3 years, maybe 4 years, I wouldn't even say those words. I didn't want them associated with our company. I didn't, we're just not about ghostwriting because we need the content to be authentic. It needs to be from the author. But then the other step is it's got to be in the author's voice. Right. So there's just a lot surrounding that. Now, of course, we will sometimes do a little bit more deeper content editing or lighter content editing. So there's a little bit of that where we're helping use our skill, using your skill and the other editors that are on board with us. And yeah, what we, try to do is, pull out the authentic content. And honestly, as you're talking about with your, writing as meditation, and that process, that therapeutic process, it certainly is that, we hear that over and over from our authors. And the other part of that sometimes comes up, I know, in interviews that we have with our authors is we'll have authors that will sometimes say, can I use a pen name? I'm not sure if I want to, fully disclose this, as part of who I am. And we've had a discussion with them of, it's very tricky these days in the age of content that we are, where, with our social media and all of that, to try to pretend like you're, not someone, or that you are someone, and to not just, be authentically who you are. So I remember over the course of this journey with the Now Publishing Group that I've had at least 2 of those conversations with authors, and they have both said, no, you're right. I want to write this story, and it's going to be, authentically from me and use my real name. So, have you had that come up with you as well, Caroline?
Yeah, I have, and I think that choosing a pen name is very personal, and there's a lot that kind of goes into it, a lot of considerations, legal and otherwise, to consider when choosing a pen name, as far as how royalties are going to work out, and if anybody else has that name. So yeah, there's a lot to consider with that, and some people just don't want to put their stories out there, and that's okay too. But there are a lot of more hurdles to jump through in publishing if you're choosing a pen name than not. So it really just depends on the individual and really what their goals are for the overall book as well.
Right, right. Well, Caroline, it looks like we're getting towards the end of our podcast. So I have to ask you our question. So our question, the name of this podcast is What No One Knows. Can you share what no one knows about Caroline Smith, editor-in-chief of Now Publishing?
There's so many things, but quickly, I think one of the things that people really should take into consideration, not only for me, but what no one knows about me is that I also write romance novels. A few people know that, but I think that writing is a journey, and it really should be something that shouldn't be done in isolation, and it should be done with a very supportive team. And a lot of people don't consider that it can be very isolating to be a writer, and that having the support system of either an editor or an author coach or a publishing team is really just going to be able to benefit the author in the long run. So don't write in a vacuum.
I agree. Hashtag Now Team. It's one of the best parts of our company, I think, is having our team and getting able to, work together and be collaborative and to support our clients in all the ways that we can. So again, I'm so excited about your book coming out on the 20th, Writing as Meditation. And even more so, I'm excited for our clients, our new clients coming up in 2021 that are going to write their book in 2021, that they get to start using it as part of our author coaching with your lead. And thank you. Just excited that you're able to join us today on our podcast. And we appreciate you, Caroline Smith.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, What No One Knows. If you have a story to share, contact Now Publishing at publish@nowscpress.com. Visit our website, publishwithnow.com, for a free download from our The 90-Day Author book, and let Now Publishing build, publish, and sell your book.